So welcome to the next webinar from the Red and the Black series. I'm Stephen Michelle, and most of you will probably already know me. And today we're joined by Robin Adcock, who is the Cyber Technology Practice Leader at Gallagher. And this is a really interesting area, Robin, and thank you very much for joining us today. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we start. We'll take questions at the end of the session like normal. If you want to ask a question, just put it in the chat function and we'll get to it at the end of the session. But today, look, this is a really interesting area and one that just continues to evolve, Robin. So thank you for taking the time to share your experience and knowledge with us.
My pleasure, Stephen. It's nice to see everybody on the call. Hello.
Yeah. All right. So I suppose probably the very first thing to talk about is, you know, what are we currently seeing from a landscape perspective from the site, from your end? You know, what you see it probably from a coalface perspective when claims come through. What does it actually look like at the moment?
So what we're seeing, we're still seeing cyber attacks. We're definitely seeing the costs of cyber attacks escalating. We're seeing that insurers have had to respond to that. So from an insurance position, they've had to look at the claims and go, we can't keep providing the cover that we've been providing without looking more deeper into these claims. And so that's what they've been doing. So the insurers have been responding to these claims by increasing premiums, increasing deductibles, sometimes reducing coverage, but more importantly, having a really high scrutiny on companies' controls.
So do you see, is there a big take up in insurance in this area? Are a lot of companies, 50% of companies out there have cyber insurance, or is it unknown as to, you know, a lot of companies not even know that you can get insurance for these sorts of events? What do you think about that?
It's certainly not 50%, but the market is now completely inundated with new business opportunity because people can now see the risk more so than ever before, because when you look at all the statistics, there's actually no, it's across industry and it's across all business. So every single business, small, medium or large, is actually open to a cyber attack. So we're seeing more and more people trying to get insurance, but sometimes we actually have to work with clients for some time to actually prepare them to go to the market so that they're not knocked back from insurance. Because maybe like 3 years ago, if you wanted cyber insurance, it was a very easy, accessible product, whereas now it's not. You have to actually have the right information, the right controls and procedures in place in order to access the insurance.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about that shortly when we just talk about insurance availability and what to actually do to try and get this type of insurance. But, you know, on this particular webinar, predominantly there are accountants and solicitors that are listening in. Why is that sort of those two groups, you know, why are they high in the, I suppose, the food chain to be hacked or attacked by cyber?
I think, like, there's so many reasons actually. The major reason is because they have such valuable data. So, you know, all the information they're dealing with, either as an accountant, sensitive financial information, solicitors, sensitive legal information, litigation, criminal, you name it, the kind of everything they have in their databases is commercially sensitive and market sensitive. So there's that reason. They're ripe for what is now what's called triple extortion. And so what's happening is you have a ransomware attack, and then essentially once they're in a system, then there's a whole process that occurs. And part of that process is there's third parties looking on the dark web to see who's had leaks, and then they then contact the clients. And so not only is the actual client that's been attacked held to ransom, they're then potentially going to go to the clients and say, we've got your data. So, you know, there's a whole domino effect of what is a triple extortion when you've got locked data or deleted data that belongs to clients that are sensitive. So they also, I think criminals perceive that accountants and solicitors and professional services are actually not focused on their IT security, because that's not that's not their thing, you know.
Yeah.
That's not their expertise. So
so
in the industry, they're known as kind of like low-hanging fruit to a degree, because they know that the processes potentially aren't there. And the other thing is there's so much reliance, again, because that's not their focus, is not HR, finance, all those things is not their focus. And so they're reliant on third-party platforms to do a lot of their efficiency in their business. And unfortunately now, those platforms have become the vector for attack, because they attack those platforms, and then they've got weak security, but they're holding the data of the accountants and solicitors' clients, then, you know, it's still the accountants and solicitors that have to front the privacy commissioner for the vulnerability of their client's attack. They also, everybody was susceptible to being more vulnerable through remote working, and number of accountants and solicitors is now still working from home on a hybrid model. So the security was never up to the same level of being in an infrastructure, in a serviced office or offices, when everyone started remote working. So there's a lot.
There is a lot.
There's a lot of reasons.
It's really, you know, it's a really scary area, I think, you know, for an owner of a business. You know, I know that you sort of look, you're always trying to be conscious of it. And I think we had a chat before about the fact that you just don't trust anybody really in terms of, you know, what's going on until you actually know that you can, in fact, trust them. The dark web's got me a bit intrigued. I've never been able to find the dark web. Not that I've really gone and looked for it. But
you don't want to, because the minute you try and find it, you will have the AFP on your doorstep. So.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Well, I haven't tried to find it.
It's not accessible to.
Yeah, fair enough. So, in terms of the current landscape, you know, and the sorts of things that you're actually seeing, the sorts of attacks and what the cyber criminals are, and I think probably most of us now know that you know, that the cyber criminal is probably not your 14-year-old that's sitting in their bedroom, but it's actually a lot more sophisticated than that. In terms of some of the current statistics and those sorts of things, what are you sort of seeing?
Well, I mean, statistically, well, first of all, 51% of the breaches in Australia up to February 22 were against accountants and professional firms. 85% of the attacks came via email, and you can basically find statistics everywhere. And so it's very hard to nail down what is actually the most accurate statistic. But between 70 to 90% of attacks, no matter what report you read, is from human vulnerability. So phishing attacks lead to malware being planted, lead to ransomware, all those sort of things. So there's a lot of incidents that we actually deal with a panel vendor law firm that runs probably 70% of the attacks across Australia. And so 55% of those attacks purely come from, you know, where you've got compromised credentials. So basically cyber criminals are always looking to get credentials of us. So whatever way they can get a password, a username and a password, that just gives them access straight through into a corporate environment. So they might try and hunt down who likes dogs, who likes, you know, mother's maiden names, all those sort of things on LinkedIn and also social media platforms, and they just pull it all together. And bad password management then creates vulnerability for businesses. So, yeah.
Interesting. I mean, so what does a ransomware type attack? What do they actually look like? I mean, for those.
It's pretty scary. I mean, so over the Christmas period, we had 4 clients attacked, and they were across industry and different size businesses. So, but the one commonality was that no matter how much they thought they had prepared for it, no one's really prepared for it. So essentially the criminal comes in via something like having stolen credentials, and then moves through what they call laterally through a business system. And so there's a lot of focus on who has access to what information in a corporate system, basically, because what the criminals want to do, they want to get in and they want to move fast. So what they do then is lock down the system. They completely lock down, what they call encrypt, all of the data, all of the folders, or they now delete it. And so then once someone then comes into work on the Monday morning, logs in, and they just get this really weird scrolling down the computer and a terrible skeleton looking face saying, we have locked your systems. And so for this one client, that meant nobody could access anything. Everything was gone. They couldn't get into email. They could do nothing. And then you're reliant on dealing with a criminal generally on the other side of the world. And they're asking for so much money within a certain period of time, and you watch, they deliver like a clock, and the clock just kind of ticks down, and you might have 9 hours to pay 350,000 US dollars in Bitcoin or something like that. So it's a very unexpected and drawn out process, because what you've got then is you've got to create these work streams to respond, because what you're then doing is going, okay, we've got a demand to pay a ransom. Can we pay the ransom? Who are we paying it to? Nobody would know how to do that unless they have an expert criminal negotiator. Then you've got all your employees going, what's going on? What are we doing? And you're trying to control that messaging. You've got clients that are potentially impacted as well. So you're trying to control all your communication messaging to external and internal stakeholders. And at the same time, you've got to report through to privacy commissioners, and you've got a certain period of time to do that. And that varies in every country. And then what you've got is a whole lockdown computer system. Why? And so then you've got to run a complete forensic investigation to find out how they got in. Are they still in? Can you stand your business back up? And that's all about backups, to continue on with business as usual. And so in the 4 incidences, one paid the ransom, but it was negotiated down. The other thing is, once you know potentially who you're dealing with, they have a certain pattern of behaviour, so that the experts know, are they in a negotiable position or not? So there's that. And then we had clients that were down for over a month before they could actually get their whole business back up and running. And for example, one client had paid $5,000 insurance premium, and the cost of that claim is $1 million. So there's a lot of work streams that go on while you just try and get your business back to business as usual.
That's pretty scary, I've got to say.
It's really scary.
Yeah, the clock thing, that's really scary.
Yeah, so you always try and negotiate, because what you're also trying to do is you're trying to determine, does the criminal actually really, have they done what they've said they've done? And do they have what they say they have? But the challenge with that is if they've deleted your data or encrypted your data, generally from a privacy commissioner viewpoint, they've seen it. And if they've seen it, then you've got to go through a whole exercise of what was it and how sensitive was it? Because then you've got a whole notification process to then potentially have to go through with your clients and the privacy commissioner. Like, what were your controls and why weren't they better? That all comes down the track as well. So yeah, it's a very interesting space.
So when something like that happens, I mean, presumably you pick up the phone to the insurer and say, I've got this issue. That's if you've got insurance.
I mean, if you've got an insurance policy, you've got experts with you at the table within half an hour of even a suspected breach. And I actually can't emphasize more highly to anyone on this call that does not have a cyber insurance policy, get a cyber insurance policy, because the cyber insurance policy brings all of those experts to the table immediately to assist you. And as I said, nobody is prepared for this. And so you would be going, if you don't have insurance, you'd be going, well, who am I going to call? I'll call the police. And the police will say, call the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, and you're going to need to, and they will help you. But it's not streamlined, and it's not as efficient as having a team of people that come around you and work with your legal team, your any kind of marketing, communication, or it's a whole crisis response, and including working with your IT team to forensically investigate what is the forensic data position. So the insurance policy provides all of that. It's not like a standard insurance policy where you wait for an insurer to grant indemnity and you sit there going, oh, am I covered? Am I not covered? That sort of thing. They are with you and you have immediate response in that policy.
So they'll deal with the privacy commissioner and all those sorts of things.
So, and they bring in the actual criminal negotiator that is dealing with the criminal overseas overnight. So, for example, this one attack, I'd be in sort of meetings at 9 a.m. every morning and 4 p.m. every afternoon with our client, with the response team, 10 days straight, as we just extended the clock and kept negotiating. In the background, you're saying, oh, can we get back up? Can we get back up? What data have they got? What's going on? How do we communicate to the clients? And that's it. That's how a ransomware attack evolves, basically.
Well, I assume that the experts will, once they work out who they're actually dealing with, they'll know the best way of approaching it. Because, I'll ask you this question, but I don't expect you to be able to give me an answer to it. But how ethical the cyber criminals actually are. So they say, this is the amount. Do they actually then release your data, or will they just vanish into thin air?
There's mixed statistics on that. But so our client that paid the ransom, it was highly negotiated down, probably by about, I think at the end, about 45% down. And then they had deleted the data. So they actually had to give restoration of the data. And then they came back for more, but we just said, go away. And then never heard anything. So, I think that the challenge in this whole cyberspace is there is absolutely no guarantee of anything that is today will be tomorrow. Yes. Yeah, it's exciting, dynamic, but challenging.
Yeah, probably not that exciting for most of us, but because we probably prefer to have boring and none. So that would
well, you definitely wouldn't. Yeah, you definitely don't want to come in and have that happen to your business.
No,
but I do say, with an insurance policy and a team beside you, you feel a lot safer.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of that, in terms of actually trying to get a cyber insurance policy up and running for maybe small to medium sized organisations, how does that look at the moment? What do you need to do as an organisation to get that?
So there's baseline controls. So if you even unpack all of those events, there were controls that the clients could have had in place, and they're baseline security controls. And so things like multi-factor authentication, so you have a dual way of confirming that the password that you're putting into a device is the right one. So you've got really good backup procedures so that if you do get attacked, that you know how to get back up. So your backups should be encrypted and off-site and tested. There's a whole range of controls, and there's a risk management framework that everybody can go and refer to on the side of the Australian Cyber Security Centre. And then got different levels of maturity that businesses are expected to have attained. And so a small business is not going to be at the same level as a power station. So the risk management framework and the guidance is always there. And so if you've got those controls in place, you can get insurance. And then you should also have in place policies and procedures like an incident response plan, a disaster recovery plan, and have those tested. So you're just kind of ready to go. You have everything. You are saying to an insurer, we as an organisation are completely focused on this risk, and we are doing everything from a board level down to make sure we are mitigating this risk wherever we can. So, and I cannot emphasize enough the training of your staff, the education, the awareness and training of your staff with, phishing programs and all those sort of things. Because if you think that if 90% of the attacks come from the human vulnerability, your staff are your strongest level of defense. They're the ones that go, this email looks kind of weird, I'm just not going to click on it. So
yeah. And so in terms of getting that type of training, where does somebody look to, how do you define that sort of stuff for your staff?
Well, so I think, I mean, everybody probably on the call has a certain level of guidance around IT. So they might have, you know, they might have like managed service providers that are advising them. And so they really need to say, these are our baseline controls that are expected of us. Are these in place? And that's from a security perspective. And then, you know, there's different ways that you can access different vendors for assistance in all of the other concepts of security and resilience for a business.
Yeah. So in terms of probably just to sort of finish this bit off, you know, what should businesses be looking for, you know, sort of on a day-to-day basis, the sorts of things that actually, the sort of attacks that come through, because, you know, you see stories about some very large organisations that, you know, they hack their passwords with, you know, on the dark web or wherever they might be. And you look at that and you say, well, gee, you know, if there's not much hope for a large government department or Department of Defence or whatever in whatever country, you know, what hope is it for a small business that's, you know, running maybe a small accounting or legal practice? You know, what sort of tips can you give for managing that type of thing?
Like to get like to look at the ACSC website and really understand what's expected from them as an organisation, and if they have an IT service provider, to actually have the conversation with them and say, based on this, do we have these controls in place? Because sometimes there's simple controls you can just turn on. You can just uplift your Microsoft license to have better controls. So probably everyone's on Office 365. There's lots of levels of licensing in there that will give you controls, and you just need to know what you would do in the event of a cyber attack. What does that look like for you? It's just really lifting your interest in understanding what the risk is to your business and acting on that. So, I mean, for very small businesses, you can access cyber insurance. There's still platform availability, that sort of thing, but there's more questioning around that, even down to the point of, do you have MFA in your business, and what they call endpoint protection. So endpoint protection is that, you know, you've got basic threat intelligence looking at the ends of all your devices, so that it's just, there are controls that if you understand they're in your business, then your business can be protected from this kind of event.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of cyber insurance, you know, given that, you know, there is just so much, you know, pretty much every day you're listening about new scams and cyber attacks and those sorts of things. Is cyber insurance, is it expensive, or is it, you know, does it continue to go up in price because there are so many attacks these days? What's the situation with that?
I'm an optimist, Stephen. So, I mean, I've seen the uplift. I've seen the uplift of the focus. I've seen the uplift of the IT security spend, and I've seen the managed service providers that actually they actually want this focus. They want to be able to say to their clients, we're giving you advice to spend some more money, and then you should, basically. So you should go to your managed service provider and say, okay, are we in a good position? Is that the scope of the service in the contract that they're offering, or are they just there kind of looking after your website? So yes, I believe cyber insurance is still going to be available, but everybody needs to take their position of responsibility for the safety of all our businesses.
And of course, they can come and talk to you about
They can talk to me about anything. I love it. Like, I can help everybody. So.
Yes, I can see you're very passionate about this particular area. And it's certainly an emerging area. Well, it's probably well and truly emerged, I would have thought, by this stage. So we might open it up to any questions that might be out there. While we might wait for anyone that might want to ask a question, are any sort of final tips that you might be able to give to any of the audience today?
I guess, yeah, I think it's funny, right? Because everyone says there's certain phrases around cyber, and so people go, the humans are the weakest link. But I listen to that and I go, you're wrong. The humans are the strongest defense. You turn it around, and if you train your staff, because you know, you've all got trust accounts and things like that. So you're all susceptible to business email compromise. They love that. You know, if you've got bad password management, they want to come in, they want to take over your profile and then, you know, tell everybody in your business how to pay and change bank account details, all that sort of stuff. But it's a simple risk management step that if someone says change your bank account detail, they just pick up the phone and check if that's the right advice. So it's the same with emails. Emails coming in, just tell all your staff. If you don't know who that is, and you can always, if there's the slightest sniff of, you know, it's dodgy, they can just like put their mouse over the URL and there'll be something not right in the URL. So it's all about education and training of the staff. And then it's all about the controls that surround and try and protect your staff. And there's security controls that you need to understand what they are for your business.
Yeah.
It's about risk management.
Yeah. So be vigilant.
Very vigilant.
Indeed.
Don't trust. Zero trust.
Well, I don't think that we haven't got any questions today, so which is fine. Look, Robin, thank you very much for taking the time to share your knowledge with us. Obviously, if anyone's got issues relating to cyber or wants to talk to you about cyber insurance, your details are there, and we'll share. And certainly, if you want a recording of this webinar to share with others, we'll send that out after this presentation. Thank you very much for joining us today, Robin. Thank you, everybody, for actually spending a short period of time with us, and we'll see you at the next Red and Black in about 3 weeks.
Okay. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers.